We're at MMX in Marysville, California. I'm here with Jared Fisher, a guy that has been keeping vintage motocross going here in Northern California for a few years now. Jared, what's it like here this weekend? What's the event? What can we expect to see?
We got the AHRMA Northwest Regional this weekend here. Got a hell of a vintage track out here today I put together for the boys, and I hope everybody has a wonderful time.
Just a few weeks ago at the Dave Coupe Classic. You were here for that also. How many events do you run a year?
For 21, I'm going to have roughly about 15 to 17 events, 3 of those being vintage, post-vintage events. We'll have the CZ World Championship. Maybe we'll be hosting the AHRMA again, and then the Coupe Classic.
Now, how long has MMX been going on here?
This is my 11th year of business, and where we sit here, there wasn't a tree on this property. Nothing was here.
So you really upgraded the property a lot. You've planted trees, you've put gravel down. It's a great facility, and it looks like you keep the track real nice as well.
Yeah, we work real hard. I got an excellent crew, and everybody chips away at it, and that's what we continue to do. So got a bright future here, really working on some major improvements still to come. So,
Jared, thanks for hosting the race. Jared Fisher, everyone. If you get up to Northern California, MMX is where it's happening.
Right on, thanks.
If you were following motocross in the 1970s, the man I'm speaking to in just a moment, you're going to recognize his name. He was a factory Yamaha guy, raced at the same time as Bob Hanna and so many others. It's Danny Turner. Dan, thanks for talking to me today. Tell me about the vintage bikes and what's going to be happening out here tomorrow.
Oh, we're going to have a whole bunch of fun out here tomorrow, wrestling these bikes around. My bike is a 380 CZ and a 125 Rickman's Undap. And I'm looking forward to have some fun. This is basically my first ride back after my injury, you know.
Well, tell us about the injury. What happened?
A little incident, and I did a collarbone, got a plate, and 7 ribs in one shot.
Now, Dan, I mentioned a minute ago that you were on the factory Yamaha team back in the 70s, but you also rode for a couple of other different brands. Tell us about those and the results you had back then. What do you remember about those days?
Oh, great days. I rode a lot of Bultaco, and then I progressed up into, I did ride Team Monarch with Marty and a bunch of other guys, and we did that big race at a Royal Cycle Park one year. I rode for Penton West, early 73, and then I went to Husqvarna and rode to Port Husqvarna in 74, 125 and 250. And I rode a Hercules, a little bit of Hercules.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
I was trying to think about, I remember the Bultacos and the Huskies and the Yamaha years, but I'm trying to think right now, and you know, I get a little dusty too. I'm saying he rode something that was a little bit unusual. So you were on a Hercules for a while. How'd that ride come about?
Through Mike McGowan. I did a little bit of the 6-day qualifier rides on a Hercules, and that was an experience. It's not my style. Mm-hmm. Let me plug on this T&M Honda though.
Oh, sure.
That was 75. I don't know if you remember, and I won the first moto at Hangtown, 1975. And so as that year went going, I hooked on with a guy that was part of D&G at one time, but he was working with Tim McCool for T&M. Mm-hmm. And so he put me on the Nationals. That was the world's fastest privateer 125. And it was a rocket, and that's when I got the third in the 125 standings. And then the following year is when Yamaha signed me.
Danny Turner, he was there live back in the day that we all talk about. Dan, thanks for speaking to me.
There's only 4 different ones.
Are those all flyers?
Yes.
Ah!
Oh, I don't think I have that one. I don't think I have that one.
Do you have Pesties?
I have Pesties too.
Yeah!
I have that one.
Well,
I don't.
I ran into a friend of mine in the pits, Marty Lukaczewski, and I want to tell him that it's so good to see him. I only get to see him, it seems like at races. We just don't cross paths that much anymore.
Yeah, it's really great to see you too, Joe. And, when we met, I think it was 11 or 12 years ago when we both were living in Walnut Creek, and you moved out of a rental and I moved into it because we had a friend in common.
Yeah.
Anyway, I started racing a lot of vintage motocross after that. On and off through the years, I've gone through, spurts of a little of this and a little of that, but this is the kind of racing I prefer for a gentleman, and it's really great. I mean, everybody that participates in these type of events. Really, I mean, it's more camaraderie than it is competition, and that's what I like about it.
So tell me a little bit more about the bike you're going to be racing tomorrow. It's standing here behind me. It is a Mako 250.
No, it's a 440.
Okay.
And I've only had it a couple of years because I lost my last Mako in the Paradise Fire.
Oh.
So after that, I bought this one actually in the Russian River Valley area, and it was pretty much ready to race. I had to do a few little things to ergonomically, ergonomics for me is probably the most important thing. So having the correct controls and your brake and your shifting all set to where you're comfortable with the bike. But when I bought it, all I really had to do was put new tires on it. It had this kind of an amazing, very unusual chrome. I think it's maybe a Bassani pipe made in Italy back in 30 years ago, but it seems to work well. Works performance shocks, new Dunlop tires, and of course the classic Mako look with the aluminum tank and a taller seat. That's pretty much all I had to do to this bike, and it's a proven race bike, so it runs well.
What class will you be racing tomorrow?
I'm racing in the 60-year-old expert class, and it's a stacked class. You can trust me on that. Danny Turner, Pat Brown, those names come to mind.
Okay.
J.P. Morgan.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be on the starting line with those guys. It's a real privilege.
It was so good to see you, and let's get together a little more often. Marty Lukaczewski.
Thank you. You think that's a Bassani pipe?
No. If it is, he made his pipes in America. He was Italian.
Oh,
I don't know.
makes a good story.
We'll never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
Oh, flaming! Throttle shot! Oh, thank God for that. That could have got over you right there.
We're at the MMX race facility in Marysville, California, and I'm here with one of the original members of the original standard motocross group. Daryl, how often do you meet here, and tell us what happens?
We meet here once a month on the third Sunday of the month, usually, and we try to do it every month, weather permitting, of course.
Now, is that just for vintage bikes?
Absolutely not. Although there are a lot of vintage guys in our club and post-vintage riders as well, we're a club that encompasses everyone, kids, modern bikes, everything.
Daryl Johnson telling us how it goes down here at Marysville. Thanks for talking to me, Daryl. My day wouldn't be complete if I didn't stop by and talk to my friend Siege. This guy has done it all from making T-shirts. His artwork is phenomenal. Plus, he put on the Hammer and Tong series for many, many years up in the great Northwest. Tell me more about the Hammer and Tong series. What were you doing up there, and how long did you do it for?
To squash a 75-hour story into 30 seconds. In 2000, AHRMA introduced bikes for after 75. But the West Coast guys didn't want to run them, and I understand why. And we wanted to run them, so we had an arm wrestling contest, and they said, start your own series. And we went, okay, watch this. And so we did.
Tell us about some of the shirts you made here for this event today.
When I do a T-shirt for a race, I try to always use a local person who is a deserving person. If it's someone that helped a lot or someone who is always there. It doesn't matter if they're fast or slow. It's not about stardom. So I try to get everyone on there.
I really admire that you've spread the goodness around as much as you can now. Probably, well, I don't want to say it is the most impressive, but yeah, it kind of is, because T-shirts are T-shirts, but your artwork that you have here today, original artwork that you've created, tell me about the inspiration for the Indian picture.
Well, I got invited down to be the featured artist at the Hand-Built show in Austin, Texas. And so I had done a lot of industrial work early on. And by work, I mean imagery, spark plugs and carburetors and things. And I was looking for a bike that wasn't your standard Harley or something, obvious. And I knew a guy who had a beautiful old restored Indian board racer. And so after I popped by to see him one time, I said, I should paint that bike.
Siege, thanks for taking the time to speak to me. I know you're a long way from home, but it was great seeing you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Siege. Jordan and I had a great time up there in Marysville this past weekend, talking with guys like Siege, Daryl Johnson, and so many more. Now, once things loosen up, we're going to want to make it out to a lot more events. So please, if you have a race coming up, vintage motocross, maybe some kind of event that pertains to anything that has to do with vintage motorcycles, why don't you get in touch with me, and Jordan and I will try and make arrangements to get to your event, depending on where it is.